COP29 was just recently the Conference of Parties. It's the annual United Nations, I think it's relatively annual United Nations gabfest as to how to save the world from us, essentially, human beings. I would have thought one of the best ways to do that would make sure we don't breed, but there you go. Anymore, or not as much. But anyhow, no, that's not what the coalition parties is about. It is about trying to come to some form of international agreement. Well over 200 countries sending representatives to, this time, Azerbaijan. Ironically, an oil and gas producing a country which their president describes as a gift from God. That must have gone down well. And we've talked about it yesterday. The result of that was an agreement, such as it is, that up to $300 billion US a year will be given by 2035, so we've got time to prepare and plan, from developed countries or rich countries to developing and underdeveloped countries on a list that was drawn up a long, long, long time ago. As some sort of, I don't know, conscience payment, I guess is the best way to describe it, or alternatively as a way of stopping developing and undeveloped countries from carbonizing so they don't make the situation worse. Certainly, I don't know if they're going to make it better, but not worse. Now, as you know, a large number of people attended that particular conference. I think the last numbers I saw was 67,000 people attended in person, which I would have thought was problematic in terms of carbonisation anyhow, and 4,000 attended by Zoom or some sort of link. And one of those who was there and will give us a much better handle on what happened and what did not happen was Cindy Baxter. I've introduced her previously and given you a bit of her background. She's a communications consultant who's worked in both NGOs and for the government, taken a leading role in climate change and many what you call environmental activist causes. She joins us now. Cindy, welcome to the show. Good to have you on. Thank you for joining us.
Morning.
Where are you? Are you still in Azerbaijan?
No, I'm in Piha.
Oh, you're in Piha. Oh, well, that's definitely in Azerbaijan.
Infinitely preferable.
Yes, well,
although they do have Fijars in Baku, which was quite extraordinary. It was Fijar season, and all us Kiwis there were quite surprised.
Yes, you would be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, who were you representing at Baku?
I was there. I worked for a climate research group called Climate Analytics, which with another research group produces a thing called the Climate Action Tracker, which assesses government action against the globally agreed goal of limiting warming to 1.5 degrees. So I sort of deal in global emissions data and talking about who's doing better, who's doing worse, and also we analyse the climate targets as they get announced at the COP. We did a report on fossil fuel exports. And yeah.
So who?
That's I wasn't there representing anyone in New Zealand, basically.
Right. So it's an international NGO, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
A research group. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. And now, when you say you were presenting reports, who were you presenting reports to? Did you actually end up on the main conference sector presenting it to all the delegates?
No. The COP is grown to be, and I was at COP1. It's a very different thing. It's grown to be quite a different. It's a beast of many different heads. There's a whole huge section of pavilions where countries and companies and NGOs have massive pavilions where they hold, presentations and have discussions, and there's a massive sort of side thing that goes on aside from the actual negotiations. So the negotiations are happening in one sort of section of the conference, and the rest in another section. There's side events. There's big side event rooms. There's all these pavilions where there's all sorts of ideas being presented and debated. There's about 3,000 media there. So yeah, we put the fossil fuel exports report out and the CAT global update out to 3,000 journalists and journalists from all around the world, and then held sort of mini press conference. And
right. So
yeah, and
So
put it out there.
your ability to influence the Conference of Party negotiations is not very high.
Well, actually, the Climate Action Tracker has quite a lot of influence in terms of the negotiations. Well, in terms of just showing up countries to be bad. For example, we did a summary of the our petro state host Azerbaijan, rating them as critically insufficient on their climate action, and they weren't very happy with that. And yes, he did say it was a gift from God. I mean, the way it came about to get into Azerbaijan was actually because of Russia and Ukraine war. That's how we ended up in Azerbaijan, because Russia, it was Eastern Europe's region to host a COP, and Russia said they would veto any Eastern European country that was part of the EU or the wider EEA area. So that left us with sort of Kazakhstan, Georgia, Azerbaijan, and some other stans. I don't know. We ended up in Azerbaijan because I think Russia just leaned on them, and that's how we ended up there.
That's extraordinary. They're going to do that for the
It
next
is.
conference?
No, the next one's in Belém in the Amazon, where
Oh,
President
okay.
Lula is
Okay, so
hosting
that's
us.
going to be in Brazil. And I think the
Mhm.
Turkish and the Australian government are competing for the next one. Is that right?
They are. We're not sure. I mean, both could be described as petrostates anyway. So it doesn't. Oh, sorry, Bucky dog. so so it doesn't. Yeah, I think we'd all prefer to be in Australia, but yeah, Turkey. It's the authoritarian state with no protest allowed or anything. It's quite difficult, especially for
Listen,
civil
the thing that
society.
strikes us sort of normal, well, I mean, people who aren't inherently involved in the process, which I guess is most of humanity, is it seems slightly contradictory to send 67,000 people, many of them by air, to a particular conference that really would seem to be almost counterintuitive, would it, in terms of trying to
Yeah, I
decrease
know
carbon
that.
emissions?
Yeah, of course, that's right. But I mean, if you can get, for example, in Paris, the world to agree to limit warming to 1.5 degrees, it's like, it's sort of a drop in the bucket compared with the emissions that are pumping into the atmosphere. And I think for these talks, it's the only time where the smallest, because our group also advises the small island states, the Pacific Island states, and the least developed countries, so the poorest and most vulnerable countries. It's the only time they get to be able to look China and the US in the eye and speak to them as equals, and that's really important for for those tiny countries,
So
who are
let me
going
get
to
this
suffer
right.
the
So
most and
really,
who've
in many
contributed the
ways,
least.
as an NGO, you provide what scientific data to a country like, oh, I don't know, let's just say Samoa, Vanuatu, or somewhere like that, that won't
Not
necessarily have
not not
access
as
to that.
specific as that. Not as
No.
specific as that. We sort of give scientific advice into the negotiations, basically, and so we advise AOSIS as a group. And so the Pacific Islands are part of AOSIS, which is the Alliance of Small Island States. And we advise them as a group. So we give scientific, talking points on explaining the science, explaining relevant science that is relevant to it, as opposed to giving a country specific data.
I'm looking at your the one that you've just referred to as the climate action tracker for countries, and there's a map, as you know,
Yep.
on the front page of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking for a green
Not many
sort of
greens. No, not
there.
many
I can't
greens at
see
all.
any. I can't see one.
That's right. I
And
think
so, just to explain to listeners, there is
there's
on the
only
climate
40
change
countries we do.
action tracker. Yeah, you're going from critically insufficient through to you're compatible with the Paris Agreement. There's not one country in the world that's compatible with the Paris Agreement. Is that right? Have I got that right?
That's right. Yeah. Well, no, not we assess 41 countries, which total 82% of emissions. So we only look at 41 countries of the 198 that are at the UN. So it's not of every country in the world.
And
But
of the
none of the big
critically
emitters
and
are
of the
sufficient,
critically
are enough.
insufficient or the highly insufficient countries, we've got Russia, China, India.
New Zealand.
Yes, but that's not. We don't produce too many global carbon emissions in comparison
And
to
we
China,
have a fair amount
Russia, and India.
of clout at the COP, though.
Sorry,
Unfortunately, we have a fair amount of clout at the COP. We always have.
why is that?
I don't know. I don't really understand it. Maybe it's MFAT. I'm not sure, but I know that New Zealand has always punched above its weight. I think it's because It is traditionally acted in a group called the Umbrella Group, which is Australia, Japan, the US, Canada, Switzerland. It's the countries outside of the EU, the developed countries outside of the
So does New
EU.
Zealand have a good
Um,
international profile that allows it to have that degree of influence beyond its
well, I
5.5
don't know
million
if it's
people?
I don't know if it's a I don't know if it can be construed as good or bad. To be honest, from my perspective, I've never really seen New Zealand taking a very strong leadership stance at the climate talks. It's usually one of trying to undermine progress on behalf of our industry.